Welcome to Cracked Open, a podcast about life, love, loss, and the truths we discover along the way. Together, we'll explore the struggles that shape us, the lessons we carry, and the hope that keeps us moving forward. This is more than stories. It's honesty. It's healing. It's real. Let's get started. And now your host, Glen Nunes.
Some of the deepest wounds in life aren't caused by people you hated. They're caused by people you loved with everything you had. So how do you pick up the pieces without becoming bitter? It's a great question, isn't it? Today, it isn't just about broken relationships or anything like that. It's about what happens after your heart is broken, whether it's a spouse, a friend, a family member, or anyone in life that you trusted. Some people do not break your heart all at once. They break it slowly, with confusion, with calculated silence, with false hope, and with tiny breadcrumb moments of affection that keep you trapped in a cage. It's a rotten, horrible thing. You think you are loving them with a pure heart, but slowly, day by day, you're completely abandoning your own soul. You think patience will change them, but patience only teaches them that your pain has no limit. You think holding on proves your loyalty, but it only proves how deeply you have abandoned your own spirit. So today, your soul is no longer asking you to love harder. Your soul is asking you to wake up. So have you ever looked in the mirror after someone walked out of your life and wondered, what is wrong with me? Maybe you gave everything you had. Maybe you loved with your whole heart. Maybe you prayed, forgave, waited, hoped, and yet somehow you were the one left picking up the pieces. So today I want to tell you something that took me a long time to learn. Sometimes healing doesn't begin when someone comes back. Sometimes healing begins when you stop waiting for another person to put your heart back together. And that's what today's episode is about. So welcome back to Cracked Open. I'm Glen Nunes, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for being here. And if you've been with us for a while, welcome back. So today's episode is called Picking Up the Pieces. We've all heard people say, just move on, get over it, or time heals all wounds. But anyone who's ever truly loved someone knows it doesn't work that way. You don't just wake up one morning and decide your heart isn't broken anymore. It does not work that way. Maybe someone walked away. Maybe they betrayed your trust. Maybe they chose someone else. Maybe they simply couldn't love you the way you needed to be loved. Maybe they just lie straight to your face over and over. Whatever your story is, the pain is real. So today isn't about blaming the people who hurt us. It's not about pretending what they didn't matter either. It's about something much more important. How do we rebuild ourselves after our hearts have been shattered? And how do we keep loving without becoming bitter? How do we find hope when it feels like part of us have been left behind? These are questions that we're going to wrestle with today. I remember in my first season, I did an episode on rebuilding because I've rebuilt many times in my life. Most people rebuild if once in their life. I've done it a few times, so I've been there. And when I do these podcasts, I do my research. I watch the YouTube videos, the podcast, listen to the sermons, read the Bible, do all that. And I always come back to my personal experiences in my life because those are the ones that hit the hardest because their true testimony is powerful. So again, welcome back to Cracked Open. This is the table where the masks are thrown straight into the garbage and we lay the truth flat on the stone. So thank you for your unshakable loyalty and for holding the perimeter with me for almost 50 straight weeks. My last episode got a great response. It's been absolute thunder. It's been going great. But today, I'm coming to you straight from the gut. I went for a drive today. I let the windows down. I was going to go for a bike ride, but my head wasn't in the game, so I'm going to put four wheels on the ground. I looked at all the debris of what happens when you pour gold into a vacuum. And today, we're talking about the cleanup crew. We're defining the exact moment that you stop staring at the broken floor, you lift your head, and you stop picking up pieces. So let's define this topic with total high velocity precision. Picking up the pieces is not a soft, weak, codependent morning session. Nothing like that. It's an act of absolute masculine warfare. That's what it is. It's the calculated discipline it takes to reclaim your time, your energy, your focus, and your dignity after loving the wrong people. It means realizing that walking away doesn't mean you failed at love. It means your wisdom finally became stronger than your attachment. You're stopping the cycle of begging for love, and you're beginning to heal with raw wisdom. I want to be careful as I talk about this topic, because when I say walking away, I've talked about other experiences I've had on my podcast where I had a family member I didn't speak to for a while. And then many years later, I kind of regretted that because I lost much of the life of my granddaughter. So it's a fine line. So I want to speak on this topic today about what it really means, and don't go down a rabbit hole or let you go down a rabbit hole so I get to the point of what I'm trying to discuss today and not think it's something else. So before we can talk about healing, I think we need to understand something. Heartbreak isn't just emotional. It's physical, it's psychological, and it's spiritual. It's awful. I can't even, if you've never gone through anything like what I'm talking about today, terrible. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Have you ever noticed how after someone breaks your heart, you can't sleep? You lose your appetite. You replay every conversation over and over. You wonder what you could have done differently. That's because your brain isn't just dealing with sadness. It's dealing with the loss. When we love someone deeply, our brains form powerful emotional attachments, and those attachments become part of our daily lives, our routines, even our sense of security. So when that relationship or whatever the situation you are in changes or ends, it can feel almost like withdrawal. That's why people say things like, I can't stop thinking about them, or I know I should move on, but I can't. And it's not because you're weak. It's because you're grieving. And I did a podcast on grieving. Grief isn't just reserved for funerals. Sometimes we grieve people who are still alive. We grieve the future we imagined. We grieve the dreams we built. We grieve the life that we thought we were going to have. And here's why many of us make our biggest mistake. We spend all of our energy trying to get the other person to heal our pain, when the truth is that the real healing has to begin inside of us. Okay, so really think about that. And I've been saying season 3, I want it to be very positive and moving forward. And I am doing that. And I want this one to be positive. But I know there's people out there who listen to me regularly. Oh, he's whining again or crying or whatever the situation he's in. And then I have some people who tell me they look forward to seeing where this journey has been and where it's going. And I have people who have told me they get a lot from the podcast. I hope I don't stop doing them, because every now and then I keep wanting to quit. It's that mental crazy stuff that happens in all of our brains, right? But anyways, this doesn't mean that we stop loving. It doesn't mean we stop caring. But it does mean that at some point, we have to stop asking someone else to carry the responsibility for putting our broken heart back together. And that's where the journey begins. It begins right there with you. One of the hardest truths to accept in this life is that love is not always enough. You can love somebody with a total pure heart and still be destroyed by them. And I want to define that word destroyed later, because you can forgive them and still feel absolutely zero peace. And in some of my research, I found that we have to understand the difference between real love and chemical attachment. When someone hurts you, confuses your heart, and then hands you a little bit of affection out of nowhere, your brain becomes addicted to the cycle of pain and comfort. You stop expecting basic, consistent respect, and you start accepting little moments of kindness because you've been living in starvation for so long, or for too long. We aren't always chasing love because our hearts are big. Sometimes we chase love because we have not yet learned how to sit peacefully with ourselves. And when we understand this, you stop blaming the other person and you begin healing the part of you that allowed the pain to continue. We aren't always missing the person as they truly are in reality. Most of the time, we are missing the idealized version of them that we created in our own minds. The beginning promises, the sweet words, all the desperate dream that one day they would finally become the partner we needed. Attachment creates fear, anxiety, and pain, and it says, I cannot live without you, even if you keep destroying me. But true love, it gives freedom, boundaries, and respect. It says, I care about you, but I will never lose myself for you. And that's where you have to try to get to. I remember talking to my oldest son, my stepson, Nick, about this once. I was telling him as he was getting older, I was telling him as a man, there's a couple of things that you expect or you thrive for in life. A man just wants respect and appreciated. And that's pretty much two of the biggest bullet points, I think. And also, you want someone to know that you would die for them, and you want them to believe that in their heart. It's three of the things that, personally, that motivated me, or I don't know if the word's motivated, that drove me. I guess that's the better word. But anyways, many good-hearted people, man, they completely misunderstand compassion too. They think being kind means always forgiving, always understanding, always staying even when your heart is breaking into fragments. But true compassion, it's not the same as self-abandonment. You can understand that someone has pain, but that does not give them permission to make your soul the dumping ground for their damage. You can feel sorry for their wounds, their anger, and all their brokenness, but you do not have to let their brokenness become your life suffering. So while you're too busy making excuses for their trauma and saying, oh, they had a hard life, or this poor thing, this happened to them, or this and that, that's why they can't love properly. You forget that you are bleeding out on the floor. Compassion without boundaries is nothing but self-destruction. If you keep giving your love to someone who never changes, you definitely are not helping them heal. You're only teaching them that they can hurt you and still keep unlimited access to your sanctuary. A peaceful heart, it still needs a locked gate. And a kind person still needs hard limits. And a spiritual man still has the divine right to walk away. You do not need to prove your goodness by accepting disrespect. You do not. I've learned something over the past year that I've never wanted to learn. You can love someone with all your heart, pray for them every day, forgive them over and over, believe in them when no one else does, and still end up with nothing, heartbroken and back in the dumpster. For a long time, I thought if I loved harder, waited longer, or just found the right words, everything would eventually work out. I believed that if I was patient enough, understanding enough, faithful enough, somehow I'd be able to fix what was broken. And you know, these people, they tell you, oh, give me time. When people say give me time, be careful. Red flag, huge red flag. And when people say they want to fix themselves and all this stuff, just be careful, because you don't know where their heart really is. Because love has a painful truth attached to it. You can only control your own choices. You can't make someone else heal. You can't make someone choose you. That doesn't mean your love isn't real or wasn't real. It doesn't mean that your effort didn't matter or doesn't matter. It simply means that every relationship involves two people making two separate decisions. That's what it really is. And maybe your story, I don't know what your situation is, but maybe your story isn't about a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Maybe it's a marriage that ended. Maybe it's a child who won't speak to you. Maybe it's a friendship that slowly disappeared. Maybe it's someone who betrayed your trust in a way that you never imagined. Whatever your story is, and everybody has a story, right? If you're listening today and you're sitting there just trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces, I want you to know something. You're not the only one. Trust me. The question isn't whether your heart was broken. The question is, what do you do with the broken pieces? Do you spend the rest of your life trying to force them back together the way they were? Or do you allow God to begin making something new? Sometimes the hardest part of healing isn't the day someone hurt you. It's the day that you realize you have to let go of the future that you've been praying for. It's the day that you whisper words that you never, ever wanted to say. I never wanted this day to come. Whether that's a relationship or a friendship or a dream, letting go can feel like losing a part of yourself. It's awful. It's a terrible feeling. And I'm going to be completely transparent with you tonight. I'm walking through a fire right now. I know what it's like to stand flat-footed on a stone foundation while the environment under the roof goes completely toxic. When you love the wrong person for too long, you slowly begin to lose yourself. At first, you don't even notice it. You start changing small parts of yourself just to keep them happy. You silence your feelings because you don't want to create problems. You ignore your own pain because you're too busy trying to understand theirs. You keep asking, what do they need? But you stop asking, what do I need? And this is how self-abandonment happens. It doesn't happen loudly. It happens quietly. One compromise at a time. You stop doing the things that make you feel alive. Your happiness begins to depend entirely on their mood, their message, their attention, their approval. Your whole world starts revolving around someone who isn't even treating your heart with care. But recently, through sheer stress, focus, and discipline, I've completely rebuilt my physical temple. I lost almost 40 pounds. I've committed to a higher standard. I had to take a look at my own mind, and I had to say, why do I stay so long in bad situations? Why do I ignore warning signs? But I look at my own pain with compassion, not self-hatred. I wasn't weak. I was sincere. I've stayed in things because I truly believe in restoration. I believe things could be unimaginably better if two people are on the same page. But the old version of me, it stayed because I didn't know any better. I was married for a long time, and I have great kids, and I wouldn't change a thing. But there was some points in that marriage I probably should have ended it a lot sooner. And then I jumped into a rebound, and I should have ended that one a lot sooner. And I've done other things that I should have ended a lot sooner. But the new version of me is learning to choose peace with unshakable self-worth. My kindness was never the problem. The problem was giving that gold to someone who didn't know how to value it. That's pretty much it. So look at the scriptural steel. I sat in church this week. During that sermon, I kept hearing, hang on. He's preaching about Jacob wrestling with the angel and grabbing hold of the heel and refusing to let go until he got his blessing. And immediately, my trauma tried to play a trick in my mind. My emotions tried to whisper, see, God is telling you to hang on, hang on. Hang on to the waiting room. Hang on to this, hang on to that. But I walked out of that church, and I was talking to a really good friend of mine. He gave me a totally different, airtight, masculine discernment. He looked me straight in the eye, and he said, Glenn, no, God isn't telling you to hang on to some toxic attachment that destroys your soul. He says, you are a mess. You've been a mess. He's telling you to hang on to your faith because something 1,000,000 times better is coming right over the horizon. I was like, wow. You can't let the enemy twist the word from God to keep you trapped under a roof where you can't breathe. Look at Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19. He was completely maxed out, exhausted from fighting a corrupt system. He ran into a dark cave, begged for his life to end. And God didn't judge his fatigue. He fed his physical temple, he forced him to rest, and he told him to stand out in the mountain because his purpose was completely unfinished. So your exhaustion, it's not your permanent identity. Hang on to the faith, not the wreckage. And one of the things that I've learned from Scripture is that God never asks us to pretend we're not hurting. The Bible is filled with people of broken hearts and crushed spirits. David cried, Jeremiah wept, Naomi lost everything and even changed her name because she believed bitterness had become her identity. Martha and Mary stood beside the grave of their brother, and Jesus himself wept. Smallest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. Think about that for a moment. Jesus knew he was about to raise Lazarus from the dead, and he still wept. And why? Because grief is not a lack of faith. Grief is the price that we pay for loving deeply. Sometimes Christians feel guilty for grieving. They think if they had enough faith, they wouldn't hurt so much. But Scripture tells us a different story. God doesn't condemn broken hearts. He draws near to them. And you've heard me speak on Psalm 34:18 before. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Go listen to my Crushed in Spirit podcast. I thought it was very good. I explain in that pretty intensively what that means. And notice what it doesn't say, though. It doesn't say God immediately removes the pain. It says he comes near to the people who are carrying it. So go read that scripture and think about it and meditate on it. And now I want you to imagine a world-class vase crafted with pure precision. One day it gets knocked off the shelf, it shatters into 1,000,000 sharp pieces across the tile floor. Most people will look at the wreckage, call it garbage, and throw it in the dumpster. But the ancient Japanese art of kintsugi, I've talked about this before in one of my other podcasts. It's a master craftsman who does something radical. He doesn't hide the cracks, and he doesn't throw away the broken pieces. He meticulously gathers every single fragment and reconnects them using specialized lacquer mixed with pure liquid gold steel. It's a crazy process. And when he's finished, the breaks are not disguised. They're all highlighted in gold. The vessel becomes 10 times stronger, more resilient, and infinitely more valuable than it ever was before the crash. It's a great metaphor, and it's a great example of what we're talking about. That is what healing looks like. Grace doesn't mean the wreckage didn't happen. It means the gold in your seams make you unshakable. But here's the hardest piece that you have to pick up. You must let go of the absolute need for an apology. You have to accept that the person who broke your heart may never have the honesty, the maturity, or the awareness to even say they're sorry. Fortunately, I've had people who've done some rotten things to me apologize, and it meant a lot. But it didn't make it better, but it did mean a lot. The ones that do not apologize, they protect their ego more than they protect your heart. It's just the way it is. And they would rather pretend that you are the problem than face the truth of their own careless actions. Your healing cannot depend on their awakening. If your freedom requires their confession, your peace is still just sitting right in their hands. Healing requires discipline, not discipline of anger, but the discipline of self-love. It means the absolute discipline to not text when you feel weak, the discipline to not check their life when you are trying to rebuild yours, the discipline to not open the door just because they knocked again, the discipline to choose long-term peace over short-term comfort. Stopping yourself from returning does not mean that you didn't care or you never cared. It means that you finally care about yourself. It means that you're choosing healing over habit and wisdom over attachment and self-respect over emotional weakness. Remember, that place that broke your peace cannot always become the place that heals you. Sometimes missing someone is not a reason to return to suffering. Closure doesn't come from their words. Closure comes from your own understanding when you finally say, they may never understand what they did, but I understand what it cost me, and I choose peace now. It's very important. And when you've loved the wrong person, you may feel an immense emptiness when you finally close that door. But that emptiness is not proof that you need them back. Sometimes that emptiness is simply the clean, open space where you must rebuild yourself. Don't rush to fill that space with noise. Don't run back to the old pain just because peace feels unfamiliar. And don't run to someone else like a stupid rebound because you're just going to cause yourself way more aggravation in the long run. Learn yourself again. Become your own safe place. Rest when you are tired. Eat properly. Clean your environment. And spend actual time in silence. So write down what you feel. Make sure that you journal. Listen to your breath. And do the small daily things that tell your own soul, I'm here for you now. These actions, they slowly teach your heart that you're safe with yourself again. And hear me clearly on this. When you write down your private thoughts, you protect that paper like battlefield intelligence. If you use a journaling app, you put an uncrackable password on it. You do not hand your security codes over to anyone out of comfort, because weak, small-minded, parasitic people love to violate people's privacy. They steal people's journals, and they'll read your sacred thoughts just to find a borrowed sword to use against you one day. You must establish an airtight perimeter around your inner processing. Your thoughts are holy currency. Protect them like gold. These small daily protocols, they teach your heart that you are safe with yourself again. When sadness or loneliness comes, notice it without judgment. But every day, you have to ask yourself something. You have to say, what do I need right now? Maybe you need distance. Maybe you need to cry. Maybe you need to stop checking their life and start taking care of your own. Maybe you have to move and go move in with somebody. Call your mom, call your friends, whatever. Maybe you have to take off for a while and isolate. Get away from whatever situation you may be in. I don't know what your situation is. But mindfulness means being fully present with what is happening inside you. And when sadness or loneliness comes, notice it without judgment. Breathe and say, this is what I feel right now, but this feeling is not my whole life. Slowly, you'll begin to hear your own voice again. You'll remember that before they came into your life, you were someone, and after they leave, you are still someone. You're not the only person who was hurt. You are the person who has the power to heal. Rebuilding the relationship with yourself means promising your soul that you will never ignore a red flag again. It's important. It means promising yourself that you will never beg for basic respect ever again. It means promising you will never disappear just to keep someone else close. But do not let pain make you hard. It is very natural to feel afraid after loving the wrong person. It's easy to say, I will never trust anyone again. I will never be soft again. Your heart wants to build a giant brick wall to protect itself. But a hard heart is not peace. That's just fear wearing the mask of strength. That's all it is. A hard heart, it keeps out the pain, but it also locks out real love, real kindness, and divine connection. And the person who hurt you does not deserve the power to change your beautiful heart into something bitter. Caring deeply was never your weakness, and giving your heart to the wrong person was the mistake. Learning boundaries is the lesson. You can have a soft heart and still have an iron shield of boundaries. A healed heart does not say no one can be trusted. A healed heart says, I will trust slowly. I will observe carefully. I will not rush into attachment. I will never abandon my intuition again. Do not bury your heart. Do not become cruel. Let your pain teach you discernment, knowing who deserves your time, your energy, and your trust. The goal is not to become untouchable. The goal is to become unshakable. So turn your wound into wisdom. And the final lesson of the cleanup crew is very simple. Don't waste your pain. What happened to you is painful, but it does not have to be meaningless. Real transformation does not begin when pretending nothing happened. It begins by looking honestly at what happened and deciding that you will not let it control your future. You decide that the pain will not make you bitter, and you decide that the betrayal will not make you cruel. You decide that heartbreak will not make you close your soul forever. Instead, you let it make you more awake, more careful, more peaceful, and more connected to yourself. The wrong people may have broken you and confused you, but they are also the exact reason that you finally woke up. So think of it that way. One day, you're going to look back and understand that they did not destroy you. They simply revealed what you needed healed. They showed you where you were giving too much and where you accepted far less than you deserved. They revealed that you were choosing a toxic attachment over sacred peace. And without awareness, pain is nothing but a permanent loop. You meet the same kind of manipulator. You ignore the same kind of red flags. You forgive the same disrespect. And you lose yourself all over again. And you can do this with the same person over and over if you don't smarten up. So you got to be careful. But with awareness, pain becomes a master teacher. You begin to look at your past and you ask the deep questions. Why did I accept this? Why did I stay? What part of my history believed that I had to earn love? Stop looking back at your history and saying, I was stupid. Look at your past and say, I was learning. You learned what kind of love drains you, right? And you learned what happens when you give unlimited chances to a person who keeps repeating the same patterns. Your wound officially becomes wisdom the exact second that you refuse to repeat the lesson. And if you keep repeating it and saying, I don't know, you're full of crap. But it's very pathetic if you do that to yourself. You have to respect yourself. And there's no reason for it. And if you say you don't know why, listen, you might have mental issues. I don't know what else to say to you. You have to really reevaluate your own self. And that being said, how do we begin to heal? I don't think it happens all at once. I think it happens one piece at a time. If you've ever dropped a glass on the floor, you don't pick up every piece in one motion. You nail down, you carefully gather one piece, then another, and another, and then another. Healing's the same way. Sometimes we make the mistake of believing that one conversation, one apology, one prayer, or one good day is going to fix everything. But healing usually is slower than that. It's choosing to get out of bed when you'd rather stay there. It's deciding to go to church when your faith feels weak. It's showing up for work when your heart isn't in it. It's taking that walk. It's calling that friend. It's praying even when heaven feels silent. And those don't seem like big victories, but let me tell you something, they are. Every single one of those choices is another piece that you're picking up. And one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn is this. Healing doesn't always begin when someone else changes. Sometimes healing begins when you decide you're no longer going to let another person's choices determine whether you have peace today. That doesn't mean that you stop loving. It doesn't mean that you stop praying. It doesn't mean that memories disappear. It simply means you've no longer handed someone else responsibility for your joy, your purpose, or your future. Don't let them. They may be able to take your joy away. They may be able to take your peace away. But don't let them take your future away. Don't let them do it. And broken people, they don't heal by pretending nothing happened. They heal by facing the truth. They grieve honestly, and they allow God to rebuild what they can't rebuild on their own. So let's pause right here for a second, because I want to give you a piece of raw reality from my own archives. I'm not just recording notes to you tonight. I have lived this fire. I was married for 18 years, and I was with her for 20. I built a life. I had 6 multifamily properties, a beautiful home, and a family with 5 kids. We had 3 together. I had a daughter, and she had a son, and we raised them together. I sacrificed everything for that foundation. Literally, I quit music for 20 years. I didn't touch a single string or a single note live anymore because I was working 3 jobs. I got my real estate license. I got a life insurance license. I got a private investigation license. I just started doing all this stuff just to protect my temple. And then, through betrayal and infidelity, it all collapsed. I lost the properties, I lost the house, I lost the layout of my family. I remember sitting there on my knees in my bedroom, completely broken, running a mountain of bills and child support and looking at the ceiling thinking, wow, my life is just a mess. It's over. It's crushed. And my dog Marshall, he actually came over and laid his head right next to me, and he rested his head while I was praying to God in absolute agony. I opened my eyes, I looked over, and he was laying his head right on the bed with me. It was amazing. But hear me closely on the entire timeline of grace. As time passed, I realized that her walking out of my life was the absolute greatest favor anyone had ever done for me. What I thought was the worst day of my life turned into the birth of my absolute unshakable peace. God didn't destroy my kingdom. He redirected me away from a table where my soul wasn't respected. He brought me back to my power and back to my purpose. So if you're standing in a broken room tonight wondering why a door closed, breathe deeply. Sometimes the ending that you're crying over is actually God clearing the debris so he can write a better paragraph for you, a better page, a better chapter in your story. So what happens after you pick up the pieces? That's where we end, not with surviving breakup, but with the possibility that God can build something beautiful from what feels broken today. I'll tell you this, God still builds with broken pieces. If I leave you with anything, I want to leave you with this thought today. As I just said earlier, when something valuable breaks, our first instinct is usually just to throw it away. We look at the broken pieces and we think they're useless. But God has never looked at broken people that way. As I said earlier, but throughout the Bible, God took broken people and did extraordinary things with them. Moses had a past, David had regrets, Peter failed publicly, Paul persecuted Christians, all and on and on and on. And none of them were disqualified because they were broken. In many ways, their brokenness became part of the story God used to reach other people. And maybe that's true for you too. Maybe the pieces that you're trying so desperately to hide are the very pieces God will use to help someone else one day. If you're listening today with tears in your eyes, and if you ever wondered if you'll ever laugh again, whether you'll trust again, whether you'll ever feel whole again, I want you to hear this. You're not beyond healing. It sucks. It's terrible. Your heart may be broken, but your life isn't over. And if you ever get any crazy thoughts and think that's not the case, you better call somebody. Call your pastor, your friend, your mom, your soulmate, your forever, whoever it is. Call them. Because this chapter may hurt, but it doesn't have to be the final one. And usually on this show, we talk about how you pick up your own pieces after a breakup. But now, I want to talk to you about a different kind of wreckage. I want to talk about what happens when one person's toxic relationship breaks an entire circle of people into pieces. I was scrolling through an online support forum the other night, and I stumbled across the post that perfectly captures this tragedy. This was written by a 32-year-old woman. I'm not going to mention any names in case someone's on this forum, but she's a 32-year-old woman, and the title of her post was simply, "I stayed too long, and now I have no one left." So it caught my eye, and I read it. So let me read you a piece of what she wrote. She wrote, "For 5 years, I was trauma bonded to a classic narcissist. He manipulated me, he gaslit me, and he controlled me. Every single week, I told my mom, I told all my friends, and I told this one amazing guy who had been quietly waiting and loving me for years. I'm leaving this weekend, I promise. I kept saying it, I promise, but I never did. And to keep my toxic boyfriend happy, I started cutting off all these people who had warned me. I stopped taking my mom's calls. I stopped going by her house. I picked fights with my best friends. And finally, I told the guy who was patiently waiting for me to stop bothering me. Eventually, everyone got tired of watching me drown. My friends stopped inviting me out. They stopped inviting me to do all kinds of things. My parents, they drew a hard boundary. And that patient guy, he finally moved on. He got engaged to someone else. And last month, this toxic guy finally left. He packed his bags and he walked out. The monster was finally gone. But when I picked up the phone to call my best friend to tell her it was over, she didn't answer. I texted my mom, and she replied with a cold, formal text. I looked up that guy who used to really love me. This guy loved me more than anybody ever had in my life. And I just saw all these photos of his beautiful new life. I got what I wanted. The narcissist was gone, but I had burned every single bridge while living in that hell. Now I'm standing in an empty apartment. I'm totally alone. And I'm realizing I didn't just lose the bad guy. I lost everyone who actually loved me. Phew, that really hit home with me when I saw that. So when we read a story like that, the immediate question for this podcast is, how does she pick up the pieces now? And how do you rebuild a life when you look around that empty apartment and you realize that you're the one that smashed all the furniture? The hard truth is, she has to pick up those pieces completely alone. And that's a terrifying place to be. But I want to step back from her for a second and let's talk about the other people in that story. Because before she was left standing in that empty apartment, a lot of the other people were forced to pick up their own pieces. Think about her mom, and think about her best friends, and think about that patient, forever lover who stood by, waiting, hoping, and praying that she would finally see her worth. Every time she said she was going to leave and then she didn't, a little piece of their heart broke. And every time she chose the narcissist over the people who actually cared about her, she handed them a box of broken glass and expected them to hold it. Eventually, those people had to make a choice. They had to realize, I cannot love her more than she loves herself, and I cannot let her keep dragging me into the fire. When that patient lover finally walked away, he wasn't being cruel. He was doing exactly what we talk about on this podcast every single week. He started loving himself enough to stop waiting. He had to pick up his own shattered pieces, dust himself off, and go build a life where his love was actually valued. And her parents and all her friends, they had to draw a boundary for their own sanity. So if you're listening to this today, and you're currently the person throwing things at the people on your lawn, if you're the one constantly saying, I'm going to leave him, but you never pull the trigger, I want you to look at the wreckage before it happens. Do not take your support system for granted. Compassion fatigue is real. People love you, but they will not stay in the smoke forever. If you keep choosing that person who shits on you over the people who heal you, eventually the people who heal you will walk away to save themselves. And when that narcissist finally leaves, because they always do, it's just a matter of time. You don't want to be the one standing in an empty room wondering how to pick up the pieces only to realize there's no one left to help you carry them. And healing, it doesn't erase the scars. It changes what the scars mean. Instead of reminding us only of pain, they begin reminding us that we survived, that God carried us, and that hope is still possible. So one day, you're going to wake up and realize something's changed. The memories are still there. The love was real. The tears were real. But they're no longer controlling your life. You're going to smile again. You're going to laugh again. You're going to love again. And when that day comes, you'll realize you didn't just survive. You picked up the pieces, and by God's grace, He made something beautiful out of them. And before we start to close this out today, I want to leave you with something practical. Maybe your heart is broken today. Maybe you're sitting in the car listening to this. I don't know where you're at. Maybe you're lying in bed wondering how you're going to face tomorrow. You don't have to have your whole life figured out today or tonight. You don't have to know exactly what next month's going to look like. You don't even have to know what next week looks like. You just have to take the next step. Go listen to my Make the Move podcast. Very powerful. Sometimes healing looks incredibly ordinary. Just get out of bed, take a shower, eat something, go for a walk, call someone who really loves you, open your Bible, pray. Even if all you can pray is, Lord, help me. I do it all the time. I need help. Those little steps may not feel significant, but over time they become miles. And one day, you'll look back and realize those ordinary decisions, they're the ones that carried you through an extraordinary season. And don't measure your healing by whether you cried today. And don't measure it by whether you still miss someone. Measure it by whether you continue to move forward, even if today's step is only an inch. And God isn't asking you to sprint. He's just asking you to keep walking. And right here, those of you who are new to the podcast, I usually put a music playlist in the description below. And you can click the link. I'll put some songs that pertain to this episode. And after you listen, if you want to listen to some music, and maybe one of them will catch your attention. So that link will be right below in the description. And right now, that brings us to the most important part of these episodes lately. It's the prayers. I've had people tell me they love the prayers. I had one girl tell me that wherever she's at, she locks herself in a bathroom, or if she's not home, if she's somewhere else, and she'll get on her knees and listen to the prayers. That's important. And that really moves me when I heard that. If you have the opportunity, you can bow your head and pray with me. So, Father, I pray for every single person listening to me on this microphone today. Lord, for the one who is currently standing in wreckage of a slow break, looking down at a million shot pieces on the floor, please give them the supernatural steel to stop staring at the debris. Clear the shame out of their chest. Wash away the self-hatred, the self-worthlessness. And Father, give them the masculine discipline to substitute the toxic cycle for a holy standard. Feed their temple just like you fed Elijah in the cave. Break those chains of chemical attachment. Clear the fogginess out of their eyes, and give them the strength to lock the perimeter gate. Today, I want to pray for people who are listening with hearts that feel like it's lying into pieces. You know every tear they've cried, every sleepless night we have, every question that we've all asked, and every burden we've carried. So Lord, draw near to the brokenhearted just as you promised. Give strength to those who feel weak, and peace to those whose minds won't stop racing. Please give hope to those who can't yet see tomorrow. Help us to release bitterness without pretending the pain wasn't real. Please give us wisdom to set healthy boundaries, courage to face the truth, and faith to trust that you are still writing our story even when we can't understand this chapter. And please give us the strength to let go of things that we know we have to. Help us to stop fighting for false hope. Remind us that our identity is not found in people who stayed or people who left, but in being loved by you. And with these broken pieces, make something beautiful from them. In Jesus' precious holy name, amen. Listen to me closely before you step away from your speakers today. Sometimes losing someone feels like the deepest punishment, but later you're going to realize it was ultimately divine protection. Rejection is nothing but redirection. And heartbreak, it's just your soul being violently pulled away from a place where it can no longer grow. That's what it is. Many people stay in painful relationships because they are desperately waiting to be chosen. They keep giving more, forgiving more, explaining more, sacrificing their sanity, hoping that one day the other person will finally wake up and see their worth. But hear me clearly tonight. If you have to lose yourself to make someone else choose you, then that's not love. That is suffering dressed like hope. You should never have to beg someone to see your heart. And you should never have to prove your worth again and again and again to someone who keeps just treating it like it's a cheap option. When your happiness depends on whether they reply, whether they care, or whether they choose you, you hand them the remote control to your inner peace. Your lack of choice is teaching you to abandon your own soul. The path to freedom begins when you realize that peace is 1,000,000 times more important than being chosen by someone who does not know how to love you correctly. Do not hate yourself for staying too long. Do not hate yourself for loving deeply or for believing in someone who could not love you the right way. You are learning, you are hoping, and you're human. But now, you're becoming wise. At first, choosing peace will feel just like the loneliness. You'll miss the excitement, the emotional storms, the chasing, and all the pain. But do not confuse familiar suffering with true love. You are allowed to decide who deserves your presence, and you're allowed to stop offering your heart to a person who only makes you question it. Choosing yourself is not arrogance. It's healing. It is the moment that you refuse to measure your value by someone else's confusion. And it's the moment you stop begging for a seat at a table where your soul was never respected. Being alone in peace is infinitely way better than being loved in a way that makes you feel lonely. It's one of the worst things. It's terrible to be lonely, but to be with somebody and feel lonely is 10 times as worst. And you can stop the endless cycle, but you have to cut the cord. It's the only way. You have to cut that chain. If your connection ended, let it go. Do not force it to come back just because your heart's lonely. Stop begging for warmth from a doorway that only gives you coldness. Your heart is not ruined, your soul is not broken forever, and your ability to love is not gone. You are only healing from a place where your love was not protected, valued, or returned. The sadness that you feel today is not going to stay forever. And the memories that hurt you, they're going to slowly lose their power. And that person you thought that you couldn't live without will one day only become a lesson in your story. And the wrong people, they may have taken your time, your energy, and your tears, but they do not get to take your future. They do not get to make you bitter, and they do not get to make you afraid of love forever. They do not get to decide the person that you're going to become after the pain. So breathe deeply and release what was never meant to hold you with care. Forgive yourself, protect your peace, and choose yourself without a single ounce of guilt. Walk forward slowly. Leave them in the rearview mirror. And even if your heart is still tired, one day you're going to look back and you're going to understand that this heartbreak did not end your life. It awakened your soul. It taught you to love with absolute awareness, and that's going to be precious to you in the long run. It taught you to stop begging for respect, and it taught you that real love should feel safe, not confusing. and not with that pit in your stomach where you just know the love's not real. And when your healing finally becomes stronger than your attachment, you will understand the ultimate truth that you did not lose love. You found yourself. So that is the deeper truth that we examine here every single week on Cracked Open. Life has a way of breaking us down, but there's a massive difference between cracked open by circumstances and cracking your own life open because you refuse to walk away from what is destroying you. If you're listening to this right now, sitting in your car, walking your dog, or hiding in your room, and you recognize yourself in that online post, I want you to hear me. You think you have time? You think the people who love you will always be there, waiting in the wings, holding the glue, ready to fix things when you finally decide you've had enough? But they won't. Every single time you choose that toxic cycle over the people who actually value you, you crack their patience just a little bit more. And when I first heard that girl's story on that forum, my first thought was, wow, if somebody really loved her, like her family, her mom, and her friends, and her forever lover, they would have just hung around and been there for her, right? But then I woke up and I realized, you know what? That's living in absolute naivety. That's the definition of being naive. You have to put your foot down at some point. And I totally understand where those people are coming from now. At first I didn't, but now I do. And I don't even want to call it tough love, because tough love does exist. But this is something deeper. This is simply being completely aware, just like we spoke about earlier in the podcast. So don't wait until the room is completely empty to finally look for help. If you need to break a boundary, break it today. If you need to pack that bag, pack it today. Do not let your life be a cautionary tale on some relationship forum. The waiting room, it's officially closed. Put the pieces down, lift your chin up, and look at the gold steel in your seams, man. You survived the crash. Welcome home to your own soul. Treat others as exactly how you want to be treated, because your integrity is your legacy. Protect your temple. Walk in power. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If today's episode encouraged you, please consider sharing it with someone who may be trying to just pick up pieces in their own life. And I appreciate everyone who's subscribed, who comments, who sends me texts, who sends me emails, who calls me, who comes up to me when they see me. Please like and subscribe and share. It all helps, and I appreciate everyone who's done that. So until next time, this has been Glen Nunes reminding you that even when life has cracked you open, God's grace can still shine through the cracks. Take care, and God bless. And as we close today, I want to leave you with this one final thought. One day you will look back on the season and you're going to realize that what felt like the end of your story was actually the beginning of a new chapter. You may never get the answer that you were hoping for. You may never understand every choice someone else made. But healing, it isn't built on having all the answers. Healing is built on taking the next faithful step, even when you can't see the whole path. Don't let someone else's inability to love you convince you that you're unworthy of love. Don't let betrayal convince you that trust is impossible. And don't let heartbreak convince you that hope is gone. God is still writing his story. And as long as he's writing, the story isn't over. But I'm going to tell you this. If he keeps handing you an eraser to erase something, and then you write it back in, he's only going to give you the eraser for so long. You have to smarten up and pay attention. So if today you're picking up the pieces, don't give up. Keep walking, keep trusting, keep believing. One day you're going to look back and you're going to see that God was building something way stronger than you could ever see while you were just living through it. Okay? And as I was saying that, this weekend, something happened to me that I'll never forget. A man who's fighting for his life came up to me when he saw me. He was with his wife. They both hugged me. They kissed me. They thanked me and handed me a personal card. We all had attended a benefit for him together. And he told me what it really meant to him. And the words are profound, coming from somebody who's living in his shoes. And inside that card was an incredible gift that I didn't want and I didn't expect. and a donation back to the nonprofit that put this event on. But the money wasn't what moved me at all. It meant nothing. What moved me was his words, because money doesn't mean anything to this guy right now. His words were powerful in this card. When somebody that's at the end of their life tells you that your kindness mattered, you listen. You really do. It reminded me that when we're picking up the pieces of our own lives, we sometimes forget that God is still using us to help put their pieces back together, or as best as you can for them. Okay, so again, healing doesn't happen when the past changes. Healing happens when you stop letting the past decide who you're going to become. So you don't pick up the pieces because life is easy. You pick them up because your story isn't over. I know I say the same thing at the end of these podcasts, but I do want you to remember that your character is what you do when no one's watching. And your integrity is actually what you stand for when it's difficult. And your legacy, it isn't built on the biggest moments of your life. It's built on the small decisions that you make every single day. So live with that integrity, love with grace, and leave a legacy that points people toward hope. Until next time, that is it for Season 3, Episode 11 of Cracked Open. Thank you for spending the time with me. If this episode hit a little too close to home, or if you know someone who needs to hear this warning before it's too late, please share it with them. And until next week, take care of yourself and stop waiting for people who treat you like an option. And remember that it is always better to be cracked open by the truth today than to be broken into pieces tomorrow. I'm Glen Nunes. I love you guys. Thank you. This has been Cracked Open. God bless you. I'll see you during next week's episode. Take care. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Cracked Open. If today's episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who might need a little light in their own dark season. Remember, even in brokenness, there's beauty waiting to be found. Every crack is a place where the light can shine through. Until next time, stay true, stay hopeful, and keep your heart open.